Well, just as we have if-else statements to help us make decisions, we also have things called loops that help us do the same thing again and again, or the same basic thing, but usually to different elements or different items. And one of these is called a for loop. Now here's a general schematic of how a for loop works. We start by coming in and there's an initialization spot where we can set up variables, do some things like that that we need. The next thing that happens is it goes and checks a condition. If the condition is true, then it will come into the body of the loop, execute the statements, and then go back up here. But if the condition is false, then the loop ends and it just exits just like this. So if on the very first try the condition is false, nothing inside the loop will ever be done. It'll just jump around and leave. Now if it does come this way, then it comes to the continuance part, and usually this increases the value of a variable. We usually call them loop control variables, and then it comes and checks the condition again. If the condition is true, in we come and do this. If the condition is false, out we go. So let's see how it works. The schematic kind of gives you an overview, but you got to see it actually work to see it work. So let's reload, and I'm going to come over here, and here is our for loop, okay? So this part here is our initialization. This happens only once. So it comes into this loop, the variable I, and this, by the way, this variable I only exists inside this for loop. Outside of this for loop, it doesn't exist. So when we declare it here, it just exists here. So we declare it and we give it the value 0. Then we check and see, is I less than 10? Well, yes, 0 is less than 10. So we go in here and we take it and we output it to a div down here at the bottom. And so we output it. Here is outputting the number. And this, we're just going to put in a new line and a break so that they'll come down. And then we'll come back up to, and then we come up to here. I++ simply increases the value of I by 1. And so we come up to I++ and then we check again and we go around and around and around. So if we start at 0, we'll come up and we'll output 0, then we'll come up and output 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But then when it gets to 10, this isn't going to be true anymore because it has to be less than 10, and so then it'll quit. So let's see it work. Ah, there it went. So there was 0 when it first came in and I was 0, and it output that. Then it came up here and it incremented I. We call it incrementing. It increased I by 1, so I was now 1. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then when it reached 10, it didn't output anything because this condition failed, so it jumped out of the loop. It just ended. It goes to the end of the loop and picks up there. Now we can do this, I mean, we can play with this as much as we want. Suppose I start and do that so that it starts at 5. Do you know what it's going to look like? Think about it. Here it is. It starts at 5 and goes up instead of starting at 0. Suppose we take it back down to 0, and you remember how we said we could increase a number by using plus gets? Just as we use plus gets here to add stuff onto the end of the inner HTML, we can use it here to increase the number. That happened a while back. So what if I say plus gets 2? What do you think is going to happen there? Think about it, and here we go. Now it's counting up by 2s, so it gets 0, but then when it comes up it adds 2 to 0, so it gets 2, and then it adds 2 to 2 and it gets 4, and so on. When it finally adds 2 to 8, that gives it 10, and so it quits. So we can work with these in lots of different ways, and we don't have to just count up. For instance, I can start here at 10, and I can say I want to go as long as, and change this condition, I is greater than -1, let's say. And here, I'm going to say I minus minus. Now minus minus is like plus plus, except it decreases I rather than increasing it. So let's save this. Let's come over here and reload. You think you know what we're going to get? You know what the first value has to be, right? It should output a 10 first. and then it should output a 9. Oh, it kind of looks like a countdown, and that's what it is, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, so we did a countdown with it here. We can also do the same thing we did when we were counting up. We can use minus gets, and that will subtract the amount over here. So now this should count down by 2s, and it does. We can start much higher. We can start at 100 and say count down by 5s if we want to. And there we are. So these are for loops, and this is how they work. Now it's much more common. I mean, we tried a lot of stuff and we showed you all kinds of fun stuff we could do, but it's a lot more common to count up with our loops, and we often count up by 1, but sometimes we may want to do more, so it's useful for you to be aware of that. And we usually just increment by 1. And so this is more commonly what we would see. And so we come back here and we run our simple loop, and we're counting from 0 up to 9. Usually we're not outputting this index, we're using it to some good purpose, and you're going to see how that works in the next video.